a listener is obviously somebody that listens to the show. So you could go into Apple Podcast Connect and look at how many listeners you have that are on, I believe it's iOS 10 or later, which is a small subset of all the people listening, and see where they drop off. You know, how many people are listening to the front, how many people skip your ads, and how many people make it to the end. And of course, there's other platforms that people are looking at. But hearing that question, I actually want to back up a little bit and say, who cares? Does it matter? Is this just a curiosity thing? If you have download numbers, but you want to compare it to listeners, don't worry about it. Treat downloads as your leading indicator. Depending on your podcast host, it may be IAB certified, those stats. If not, then they're not certified. But again, who cares? Treat that as a leading indicator for what matters in your business, what actually drives your needle. So if your downloads go from 100 to 200 or 100 to 1,000 or from 5,000 down to 500, and your business metrics also shift, then it's a good leading indicator of what's driving that needle. So don't try to sharpen the point of that needle. Just look at it as an indicator and keep moving on with your business.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I know for me, when I started looking into getting sponsors and advertisers, they weren't asking me how many people are listening. They were asking me how many downloads do you have. So that seems to me to be the smartest answer as well. And honestly, like if you're doing your best and you're having a lot of downloads, you're getting a lot of listeners. My guess is, off of based on what Brenda Bouchard said, you probably have about 3 times more listeners than you do downloads. Just as a rough guess. I don't know. That's Sheila talk.
Well, that could be, but I don't imagine that ratio would change much from download to listeners. So assume that it's uniform from 100 to 1,000 to 10,000, and just look at the metric that you have and then gauge your needle off of that. But yeah, most sponsors want shows with at least 5,000 downloads per episode in a 30-day period, and that's 7% of all podcasts. So that's a pretty small minority. If that's what you're looking for, then that's the metric to look at. But if you're looking at it as a leading indicator for other things in your business, compare those apples to apples by trying to find an orange.
Right. I like that. So in doing that as well, you might want to be watching like your traffic on your website as well, right? If you have a podcast coming out on a Monday and you're spiking on Tuesday or Wednesday, then chances are that's a pretty good indicator they're visiting your website at least.
It's another great leading indicator, especially if your podcast episodes point to a specific page or a post on your website. Then you can gauge the number of downloads I get versus the number of people that visit the website.